Chapter-3 Ignorance. The sage alone can rightly diagnose our ills and prescribe the right remedy. He alone can unravel the tangled skein of right and wrong knowledge which fills our minds. The first thing that the sages tell us is that the cause of all of our sufferings is in ourselves alone, not outside. The Buddha is reported to have said, "You suffer from yourselves alone. No one compels you." The sage of Arunachala says the same thing. In answer to a question whether there is something radically wrong in the world's scheme itself, he said, "The world is all right as it is. It is we that are to blame, because of our own mistaken way of thinking. What we have to do is to trace the initial error that is at the back of our minds and pluck it out. Then it will be all right." This finding and plucking out of our fundamental error is the only radical cure there is. All other remedies are only palliatives. The utmost that can be said for them is that in their own way they help to lead us on to the right remedy. The religious faiths and practices that divide the world are of value only to this extent. Often they only enthrall and weaken the mind, and thus postpone the day of deliverance. In fact, from this point of view, a sincere and earnest skeptic may be far better off than the bigoted believer, the kind of believer that has not the sense to see that all these religions are for humanity, not humanity for the religions. Such a one holds his beliefs, not lightly and tentatively, as something that may possibly be falsified by the actual experience of truth, to which it only is a means, but as a veritable truth itself. The so-called skeptic is in truth no skeptic if he believes that there is something which is true, and that it alone matters. It is safe to say that he that is devoted to the truth is the best of all devotees. No believer is worthy of regard if he fails to perceive that truth is all in all, and that beliefs should be held sacred for the sake of truth alone, and not otherwise. Such a one is in a much worse position than the honest and earnest skeptic, because in the first place he is very unlikely to take up the inquiry that is sketched in these chapters. In the second place, if he goes to a living sage and seeks guidance from him, he is very likely to misunderstand what the sage might tell him. For this reason, it happens that sages, as a rule, do not give out all the teachings they have in them to all questioners alike. They withhold the deeper truths from those whose minds are unopened. For a truth that is misunderstood is more fatal than sheer ignorance. In fact, tradition tells us that Gautama Buddha once gave an answer by which the questioner was unsettled in his faith, as he was too immature to understand the answer correctly. And on another occasion, when a question was put to the Buddha by another immature visitor, he kept quiet, and later explained to a disciple that he did so because any answer that he could give was sure to be misinterpreted. Whoever therefore is willing to be fully instructed by a sage must be prepared to put aside his own beliefs. He must not be fanatically attached to any creed. The open-minded disciple who has little or no book knowledge is thus in a better position than the learned ones with minds enslaved by their creeds in many situations. With open minds, then, we go to the sage and ask him why we are in bondage to desires and fears. He replies that it is so because we do not know ourselves correctly, that we think ourselves to be something that we are not. At the first thought, it may appear that this answer is doubly wrong. We are unable to see how a right knowledge of ourselves can be necessary to the business of life. We want to know how to bend this world to our wills, or as the next best thing, how to adjust ourselves to the world, so that we may be able to make the best of the world, bad as it is. We do not see how knowing ourselves correctly can be of any help to us in all of this. In the second place, we are fully persuaded that we do know ourselves correctly. We believe that knowledge is of great value and seek to know the truth about everything that we might possibly come across in life. We are even so fanatical in this that we want to make the acquisition of knowledge compulsory for all. And all this knowledge concerns the world, not ourselves. In the course of centuries, every single nation or group of nations had piled up vast heaps of knowledge of history and geography, astronomy, chemistry and physics, as well as ethics and theology and so forth, and even what goes by the proud name of philosophy or metaphysics. If all of this be knowledge, then along with the piling up of these heaps of it, there must have been a steady increase of human happiness. But this is not the case.